Okay, so I'm here with my cat. Say hi, Misty. Or don't. Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna film a video. Look at me being like mildly productive. If I actually like post this, that'll be fucking wild, dude. You know, life has been a little rough, you know, but there's always fiction. Yeah. So I don't know if that's sad or like if that makes me an intellectual, but like I'm hoping that like if I just get through this period of my life by reading a lot, I will hopefully be smart at the end of it, right? This is the book that I wanted to discuss today. That was Then, This Is Now by S.E. Hinton. Yes, it is for edgy middle schoolers, but like I just wanted like a light read after reading like Wuthering Heights and like For Whom the Bell Tolls, because neither of those were like light, you know, pretty heavy topics in them. Yeah, so I thought I'd love some YA bullshit, you know? Just found this at like a used bookstore and there's like a huge piece taken off of the front. It's fine. I literally got it for free though, because like it was 99 cents and the lady just like gave it to me for free. So I read it. It took me an embarrassing amount of time to read. The beginning I didn't like. I thought it was pretty boring, not gonna lie. I just like literally 30 seconds ago just wrote down a bunch of like questions and stuff about this book that I thought would be thought-provoking, as if anyone is going to watch this. But like I kind of hope people do, because like after finishing this, like it was real sad. Like it was way sadder than I expected it to be. I don't remember The Outsiders being like this tragic. I remember it being tragic, but I remember it having like some optimism, I thought, at the end, right? Like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't even really remember how it goes, but like, this was sad as fuck. If you're watching this and you haven't read this, if you know me in real life, you can literally ask to borrow the book. I will give it to you. You can read it probably in like a day, and then like, I don't know, give me like a comment or something. That's so much work. I'm sorry, but if you want to, you can. Only if you want. The back of the book says, "Does growing up have to mean growing apart? Brian and Mark have been as close as brothers for as long as they can remember. Now things are changing. Brian's growing up and thinking seriously about who he wants to be. Mark still just lives for the thrill of the moment. The two are growing apart, but holding on until Brian makes a shocking discovery about Mark. Then Brian faces a terrible decision, one that will change the both of their lives forever." Okay, and then a review says, "A mature, disciplined novel which excites a response in the reader. Hard to forget." I agree, hard to forget, unless it's just like a repressed memory type of book, because it's just so fucking sad. Like, it's so sad. Yeah, I guess it is like, I don't know if it excites a response in me, it just makes me a little confused as to how someone could be so sad. Is S.E. Hinton okay? Like, has anyone asked her if she's okay? Like, she writes a lot of sad shit, like super sad shit. Like, I just feel like I should give her a hug or something. I do think this book was kind of relatable for me right now. Like, I'm in grade 12 right now. And it's just like the main theme of it is like growing up and like maturing in the point where not everyone around you is, and how that kind of like complicates everything. And like at this point in my life, like I sound like a narcissist when I talk about this, but like I do think I am mature, and I do think that like other people my age, most of them are not this level of mature, and that can make it kind of difficult to interact with a lot of them. Think about society's relationship with drugs and alcohol today versus, I wrote the 40s, this is not based in the 40s, versus the 60s. It's probably like 50s, 60s, right? Differences, similarities. Again, this, you kind of have to like have read the book, or at least have read like The Outsiders, because like it's very similar to that. Yeah, all of the kids like drink and stuff, and like it's very, very normalized. But then like Eminem, the character who's like Kathy's little brother, he runs away, and like he drops acid because he's a hippie, right? And like he has a really, really bad trip. Like he's seeing spiders everywhere, and they take him to the hospital because they don't really know what's going on, and like they think that he's never gonna go back to normal, and like the doctor is like, yeah, he might be stuck like this forever, like that's why drugs are bad. It's like it's sponsored by like some like anti-drug campaign. Like it just, reading it in 2019 is just very like, this is trying so hard to be like anti-drugs. Like also they discuss like the use of marijuana in the book, and like Brian, the main character, is very, he has used it, he says, but he didn't like it and he thinks it's very bad to use. Like, you shouldn't use it. Like, especially as he, like, matures in the novel. They frame it in such a, all drugs are the same. Again, I am not trying to defend any drug. I'm not trying to say, like, marijuana is not bad or whatever. Like, I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying it's so different from crack, okay? Like, they're different drugs. They do very different things. I'm trying not to be controversial, okay? The use of alcohol in the book is similar to today, but it seems like just overall, like, the substance use was very, like, it was much more rampant within, like, I mean, again, this is fiction, so it might not be an accurate representation of what was actually going on in real life at the time, but it's like every kid is using everything, like all of them smoked, and I guess people vape now, but it's like, those are different. Don't tell me that they're the same. I just think it's funny how, like, it's so rampant in this book, and, like, drinking alcohol is not actually, like, deemed a bad thing. It's not, like, it's not portrayed in a negative light exactly in the book. But, like, LSD is, and so is marijuana, whereas, like, we know marijuana is not as harmful as alcohol, and, okay, like, that's gonna be controversial, but good thing no one watches this. Yeah, like, it's very normalized to, like, drink in the book, but, like, drugs are so, like, no, which I understand, I guess, because it was just, like, you could get in so much more legal trouble with drugs at the time. I feel like today we kind of see alcohol as more harmful than we did back then. I say we as if I was there. But like drugs we see as, okay, drugs is such an umbrella term, like the drugs that are talked about within this novel. So like LSD and marijuana. Those are deemed like pretty safe today. Not saying it's good or bad, just saying that's how I think we see it today. And yeah, it's just kind of like very swapped, and I just think that's interesting. Like, I wonder what S.E. Hinton herself would have thought of that. Also, there's a lot of fighting in the book, and like, same with The Outsiders, obviously, like that's why like people, like the kids are dying in it, is because like they're just fighting each other. But like, it is interesting to see how normal that was, like the idea of getting beat up. And I guess like this is kind of still true today. Personally, I've never, like, I don't even think I've ever seen an actual fight. Like, I've never been involved with that. I cannot imagine being beaten up. Like, like that would, I don't know, I just think like it would probably kill me. Like, a lot of Mark's growth and like becoming a more mature person is like moving away from like toxic masculinity and like the practices of that. I do think it's interesting though that there is so much, like, they don't use the term toxic masculinity obviously, but there is very explicit like discussion about like toxic masculinity. I just think that's interesting, and I don't think that this could be written by a male. No offense, just at the time I don't think that a male could write this. She does a good job in like truly showing how like useless fighting is, and like, oh yeah, and like Mark, after he gets like, or, oh my god, not Mark, Brian, after he gets beat up by like the guys who are like defending Angela, and like Mark comes and sees the result of him being beat up, he like really wants to go fight them, right? But like Brian's like, hold your heart. So I'm like, I can't speak English anymore. He's like, hold your horses, buddy, right? Like, just don't continue this useless cycle of fighting. It doesn't do anyone good. It's just constantly both of us getting even with each other, and then what is the result? People die sometimes. Like, it's never good. And like, also like a character, Charlie, he gets like shot and he dies in this because like, literally just because of like fighting and like boys being boys, and like, it's just a whole damn mess. And like since that point, like since Charlie dying, that was like a big turning point in like Brian really seeing how useless and how like harmful fighting is, and like just violence in general, and like Mark doesn't see that, and he just keeps like Charlie's death just doesn't affect him the same way. Also, so basically a little background on Mark. His parents like shot each other in a fight and they both died. And so Mark went to go live with Brian, and like that's how close they are. Like they are that level of like gang, you know? So it could be Mark's like being desensitized to violence, that just it doesn't affect him when he sees Charlie die. Like he doesn't have that moment of like violence is so harmful and so useless, whereas like Brian does, you know? Move on to the next question, because I don't think I could just keep rambling forever about each of them and never get to the point. So yeah, is Brian a tragic hero? I think yes, because I do think that he was in the right for the most part about like, okay, I have to like spoil the ending. Basically, Brian comes home from the hospital after him and Kathy find Kathy's little brother Eminem, like high as balls. Brian, not knowing that much about drugs, thinks this is gonna last forever. He goes home. He's having a moment. He finds a stash of like drugs in like Mark's like stuff, right? He's selling them. Like Mark is like dealing drugs, and it's pretty evident that that's what's going on. Also, like Mark was bringing in like a lot of money that none of them really knew what was happening. And Brian, just having been like with like Eminem, who's like really fucked up from like the drugs and everything. Again, this kind of plays into like the whole like all drugs are the same mentality, cause like it wasn't LSD and he knew that they were like pills or whatever, and like he is just so upset because like the exact same thing that he thinks is going to like ruin Eminem forever is the same thing that like basically his brother is like selling. Like, what if like Mark was involved in giving Eminem the drugs? And so he called the police, and the police took Mark away, and yeah, he got like 5 years in prison, and then they just hate each other and the book ends. Like, I mean, Brian, like, he feels like the morning after, like, when, like, Mark is taken away and everything, he realizes, like, he shouldn't have done that. Like, he should not have called the police. Like, Mark would have stopped had Brian just asked him to. Like, yes, Mark was the one dealing drugs, but his parents shot each other. Mark didn't really have a chance, like, ever. And Brian, like, as he was spending more time with Kathy, which was good for him, and he was becoming more and more mature, he was starting to neglect Mark. And, like, Brian was Mark's only guidance. And, like, there's, like, another part in the book before, like, it's, like, somewhere in the middle where he notices that Mark is bringing in all of this money and he doesn't know where it's coming from, but he says he thinks he purposely ignored it because he just didn't want to confront it. And like, that's not what you do. Like, you can't ignore something like that and then call the police on them when you find out, especially if like this person doesn't have any guidance right now. And this isn't to say like it's a teenager's responsibility to raise a teenager. Like, kids cannot raise kids and stay sane, you know? But, you know, if you have to kind of raise someone, you have to kind of raise them. You can't just, like, commit to raising someone and then abandon them. And for anyone wondering, like, oh, well, what about Brian's parents? How come they're not, like, you know, raising Mark as well instead of Brian raising him? The mother is, like, very, very sick. Like, I don't know what with, but like she's just constantly in and out of the hospital. And the dad is not, like, we don't know about him. I don't know. I kind of like, I should probably bring up like a definition of like what a tragic hero exactly is, because like I'm not really thinking clearly. But like, I'd say yes, because he did have a lot to lose. He lost, like, in the end, he lost like his like best friend, like his brother. he lost his girlfriend, who kind of was like, not the reason that all, like, she wasn't the reason that all this happened, but seeing her so upset about Eminem is what, like, tipped Brian over the edge to call the police on Mark. So, like, he shuts everyone out just because he feels, like, so guilty. He was trying to be, like, heroic. Like his maturity is kind of what, like, had it been, okay, it's set over, like, a year. Had it been the start of the book, like, a year ago, before his, like, growth and everything, he wouldn't have called the police. He would have, like, asked Brian, like, stop dealing, like, you're gonna get in trouble, you're still on parole. Like, so yeah, I wish I had more, like, articulate thoughts on that. None of my thoughts are ever, like, organized. I'm sorry. Next question. Is Kathy a feminist icon, I guess? Kathy, I would say she's not, like, a feminist icon exactly. I would say that she's probably the most feminist character in a cast of non-feminists. Mark himself, oh my god, not Mark, oh my god, Brian. I always get them mixed up. Those two names are the same name to me and I don't know why. But, like, yeah, Brian. He starts off being very, like, not feminist. Like, he heavily objectifies women. He is, like, a heartbreaker. Like, he's kind of a fucking mess. And then, like, you kind of don't even really notice the changes, but, like, by the end of it, he learns to just, like, respect women as people. And, like, that's pretty good. It's a good change. I mean, not that that's, like, pretty good, like, wow, you can respect women, you're like Gandhi, oh my god, like, that should just be a given. But, you know, in the group that is kind of his group going on in the text, no one is good, really, to females. So, it's nice to see someone change. Yeah, I think definitely, like, had Kathy not been there, had she not been, like, a strong female character, I don't think that Brian would necessarily develop his maturity in terms of, like, how he views women. I wouldn't say she's a feminist hero because she doesn't explicitly talk that much about feminism. Like, it's not really explicitly talked about, but I think she is a good, like, feminist role model within the text. Next question topic thing. If you're in Brian's situation, in, like, when he finds, like, the drugs that, like, Mark was keeping and, like, selling, would you have called the cops as well? Like, given, like, you just got home from the hospital, like, it's the exact same situation, would you call the cops? Personally, no. Because, I mean, first of all, I don't believe that, like, don't hate me, but yes, I am a prison abolitionist. I don't believe prison does anything good, except for, like, I do think that there's certain people who, in their current state, they should not be integrated into society. Like, society is not safe with them there, but I think prison just takes, like, most of the time, it takes someone who was in a tough situation and it fucking ruins them. Like, it makes them into a bad person. Like, yeah, and I think that's what we see very, very, very clearly with Mark. Like, he goes to prison, like, still a kid, right? And then he's in there for, like, 5 years, and, like, Brian has a meeting with him, and, like, the COs, is that what we're gonna call them? I don't even remember what they were called in the book, but, like, basically, like, the people working at the prison were like, Mark is out of control. Like, someone talked some sense into him, so they brought Brian in to try to talk to him, and yeah, when Brian sees him, he just says, like, it's like looking at, like, this, like, rabid animal. Like, he's truly, like, any sign of the Mark that he knew has left. Like, he's just completely merciless, and, like, prison really hardened him. And like I just think that that is so true, and I wonder if that was like kind of like commentary on like our prison system. Like it wasn't a huge part of the text, but I think that it does serve as commentary. But yeah, if I were in Brian's situation, I would not have called the police, especially because like, okay, if it were the 40s, or why do I keep saying the 40s? Like the 60s, okay, 60s. At the time, I still don't think I would have, just because like, empathy, man, like you still know this man, like you still know Mark, like he's not just like some stranger, like you know that he would stop it if you asked him to. And like that they literally talk about that, like when Mark gets back after like Brian's already called the police, Mark said like I'll stop if you want me to, like, and like you believe him, like he's telling the truth. Brian wonders like, does Mark even know right from wrong? Like, does he even have morals when he like makes this discovery, right? But it's just like, even if he he definitely has questionable morals, but like what's prison gonna do for him about that? Like it's gonna make him a good Christian child? Like he's gonna like fix himself up in there? No one has done that. No one. Like we need to stop kidding ourselves and saying like, trying to make ourselves feel better for like sending so many people off to prison because it's gonna like help them like reform. No, we are pissed. We want to punish these people. That's why we send people to prison. It's not to help them. It's never to help them. When we say we're trying to help people by like getting the police involved, okay, that changes on the situation. But like when we're sending them to jail, we're not helping them. We're not fucking helping. Maybe we're helping someone else. Maybe like a victim of some perpetrator's behavior, right? But like, we don't help the person who is going to prison when we send them to prison. And let's stop saying that we are, you know? We don't have those good intentions, okay? We want to punish people. That's why we send people to prison. I guess like, Brian probably didn't have that perspective. He probably was thinking like, because he's maturing, and I think a part of maturing is not necessarily actually becoming smarter. I think it is a lot of just accepting societal norms, and I don't think that's always necessarily a good thing. But I think that is the kind of maturing that he was doing, which, you know, has some good outcomes, has some bad outcomes. And like, yeah, this was one of the bad outcomes. Like, I think maybe he did believe that this would help him. It was for his own good, like Mark's own good, like sending him, like calling the police on him basically. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think, like, even if I had been raised the same way, I don't think I would have that belief, because, I mean, first of all, it is the 60s, so, you know, activism is kind of becoming a thing. Like, not that it wasn't a thing before, but it's becoming, like, more out there. Prison abolitionism, prison abolitionism, I think, yeah, that was becoming, like, more widely known, and, like, just the way that our government treats us sometimes, you know, like, that was being more talked of, like, what is, like, for our own good and what's not. Like, I think it kind of is one's own responsibility to make themselves aware of what is social issues, you know, just going on. It is your job to be kind of up to date with that sort of thing, especially if you have someone in your life who has been very caught up in that. Like, he knows that, like, Mark has had a lot of trouble with the police. He knows he's on parole. He knows that he was doing his best to have, like, a clean start, you know? But, like, if you have someone like that in your life, you need to make yourself more aware of, like, issues with, like, the legal system and stuff. Like, now, next question is, if you were in Mark's shoes at the end of the text, would you forgive Brian, like, when he comes to visit? So, like, again, you have to have read it, but, like, it's, like, when, Mark, like, he's, the COs or whatever are, like, he's behaving so badly in prison that, like, we need to, like, fix his behavior. So, like, that's why they brought in Brian to try to talk some sense into him, or else he's moving to, like, a harsher prison for, like, more time or whatever. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't think I would forgive someone if I were, like, I don't think I would forgive Brian if I were in Mark's situation. I think I would want to really, really, really badly. But, like, I would not be able to realistically trust him, like, ever again. Like, if he were I mean, I don't know, it's hard to tell because, like, I think I would forgive him when we both grew older, but at that time, I would not forgive him. And I wouldn't outright forgive him when we're older. Like, I would recognize, like, he was, like, 15, he didn't know what to do, he was really upset, like, rightfully so, and I was doing something illegal. So, yes, like, I'm not gonna, like, hate him for that, you know? But at the time, like, during that visit, right, like, I would not be able to forgive him. I think I would still maybe not hate him, but not trust him and see him as someone who did not have my back as much as they thought they did. And, like, personally, I have a lot of experience with that. Like, again, like, with the whole, like, emotional maturity thing, I think that it has become a bit of a challenge, like, interacting with my peers, because a lot of the time people think they care about you more than they do at this age. And, like, they say, like, oh, I'm here for you, like, whatever you need. And then when it really comes down to it, they aren't. Like, time and time again, they are not there for you and they're looking out for themselves. I have truly believed people when they said that they were there for me, because, like, what's the point in rejecting every good thing that comes your way, you know? Like, you have to let people in sometimes. And, like, I just decided to surrender and, like, let people in, let myself trust people, let myself believe that these people weren't lying to me. And I kind of don't think that they were lying. I don't think that all of them were lying. I think some of them really did think that they loved me and they were going to be there for me. And then they didn't think, like, they didn't have the emotional maturity to think about, like, well, what if this happens? Or what if this changes? Like, if my relationship to this person changes, are they going to, like, you know, like, how are they going to react to that? And I think it is perfectly fine to, you know, like, not be there for someone if you know you cannot handle being there for someone through a certain situation, right? Like, love can have conditions, okay? Like, but you need to be clear about those conditions. Brian was not clear about, like, how much he really supported Mark. Oh my god. Okay, this isn't really making sense out loud anymore, but in my head it is. But I don't want to, like, call people out. Like, I don't want to give scenarios to, like, help me explain the situation. But these people who I've dealt with in my life, who they thought they were going to be there for me, and then when it came down to it, they were not emotionally able to handle that. And, like, they were not emotionally able to, like, actually be there for me. And that is fine. You don't, like, it's not someone's inherent job to just be there for everyone. Like, everyone would go crazy if that were the case. But if you say you're gonna be there, you should follow through with that. And, like, yeah. I do think it is valid to not forgive the people who, you know, they've proven themselves untrustworthy. Like, I have personally forgiven these people when they realize they've messed up and they come, like, crying to me and, like, yeah, like, I forgive them, and then 2 weeks later they do the same thing. And it's just like, it's very tiring. It's traumatizing. Like it causes so many issues, and I really relate to Mark in that experience. In like, you put all of your trust in someone, and then they do that. Like, you don't truly know, like, you can't trust the extent in which they can care about you. And like, yeah. Okay, it's hard to explain. Like, I think you can have plans to forgive someone without forgiving them currently. Like, I think I will forgive the future versions of these people who have hurt me, because I will assume that they have grown from who they were. And again, I can't know that they have grown, but I can hope that they have grown. And it's like, people are different people every day, not in like a shady way, but like, you're growing constantly. I am not the same person that I was in grade 5, right? Like, when I'm 20, I am not going to be the same person that I am now at 17. And the things that I do now, the things that I'm messing up about, like, that is not 20-year-old me, that is 17-year-old me. And like, yeah, that just extends to the book, in my opinion. And like, I understand, like, this kid put you in fucking prison. You're not obligated to forgive him, but like, yeah, I think if I were in Mark's situation, I would not forgive him, but I would kind of have a plan to forgive. Like, I would expect to be able to forgive him silently in my own mind in the future, if that makes sense. Probably not. I'm just so emotionally woke, guys. Like, no one can keep up with me. And then finally, the one thought that baffles me, or not baffles, just wrong word. Me trying to sound smart, but like, okay, what was the moral of this story? I don't know, Chief. I was hoping this one would just like come to me as I'm talking about the plot and everything. It didn't. I think possibilities could be like, it's not like a moral, like, it's not like a didactic story, obviously, but like, what was like the idea here, you know? I think it could just be like, S.C. Hinton, she wrote a lot of her books about like, I mean, all of them were about like being a teenager and like how hard that can be, but her whole thing was like, it gets better. Like, yeah, but in this one, it's just like, it doesn't. It's just like, the plot kind of goes like, if you do your best to be a good person, and then you make one mistake, that's like, also, like, calling the police on like Mark it is not objectively a mistake. There's definitely people who would read this and say like, Brian did the right thing. In my opinion, he did not do the right thing, and that was a mistake. But it's not objectively a mistake, and I don't think Hinton intended for it to be interpreted as like objectively this or that. You know, like, it's up for interpretation. The kind of message that I got from this was like, like, if you mature too young and your relationships are changing, right? Like, if you can do your best to be a good person, right? And choices are going to be hard, but if you follow your heart, you do what you think is right in the moment, and you don't act on like impulse even. I mean, I do think that calling the police was kind of impulsive, but I think he did think about it, and he thought in the moment it was the right decision. Like, he really did what he thought was right. And if you do that, you are left alone, and you will lose all of your connections, and yeah. Or I don't think that's the message. Like, I don't think the message is like, you are doomed if you do that, but I think the message is kind of like, you might be doomed, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Like, being mature is kind of a curse. It's the curse of maturity. That's kind of what I got from it. And, like, I think that's why it's so sad, is, like, he really tried to be a good person, and he got the worst possible outcome. And, like, I personally relate to that. Like, I didn't feel like I could trust people for, like, a very long time, and then I finally did, and then it had the worst possible outcome. And just, like, that, I guess, like, the book could just be, like, a retweet to that emotion. Like, teenagers don't necessarily feel they can, like, articulate that properly, and, like, this kind of just makes them feel, like, less alone, maybe. But almost it makes me feel more alone, because it's just, like, reminding me of how alone I feel. Like, how Brian feels. Like, he's so utterly alone now because he can't, like, he cut off all of his connections because he felt so guilty. Like, it's just, yeah. Like, it makes you feel like if you've gone through this situation, you are alone, which you probably already felt, like, but at least Brian, the fictional character, is there for you, and I kind of do appreciate that a little bit. Like, yeah, I guess the character himself kind of makes me feel, like, less lonely, and I guess that could be the point of the book, but yeah, it's hard to tell. I don't know. That's why I kind of just wish other people would read it, so, like, they could talk to me about it. Like, maybe there's something a little bit more optimistic in there. I don't know, man. It's not an optimistic book, in my opinion, but that's that. Those are my thoughts. I don't want to edit this, but, like, I'll just do it now, okay? Bye.